At my grandfather's funeral, a stranger stood up and claimed to be his son. We all thought it was a scam until the DNA test came back.
Hi, my name is Mark, I'm 24, I'm a student. I want to tell you a story that happened 3 months ago. To be honest, all this time I was in such shock that I couldn't fit everything that happened in my head. And then I got the idea to write this whole story here. To put some thoughts in my head. I'll probably start from the very beginning. I grew up in a big house on the outskirts of a suburban area, where everyone knew each other, and the neighbors brought you pumpkin pie just because it was October. My childhood was marked by old stories by the fireplace, the smell of coffee in the morning and strong, slightly rough hugs of my grandfather, Michael Ridge. He was a man of the old school, a straight back, a neatly trimmed gray beard, few words, many actions. When I was 6, he taught me to tie knots and said, "In life, everything is held either by strong hands or by strong promises. Knots are a symbol of both." When my grandmother died, I tried to be there for him, to support him. In fact, my grandmother and I were not very close. But I felt pain for my grandfather. It was obvious that he was having a hard time. That's why we all tried to be with him as often as possible. Every Sunday, the whole family would come to him. He would cook his signature goulash, listen to jazz, tell stories about the war and joke so much that I would retell these stories to my friends. When I entered college, he was the first to give me money for rent. When my parents divorced, I went to him, just to sit on the veranda in silence. He was my anchor. The one who always silently made it clear, I'm here. I'm close. When he died in 91, it seemed to me that the air became lighter, as if someone who held half of this world on his shoulders had passed away. We organized a funeral without pathos, the way he wanted. No choirs, no speeches. Just family, photos, memories. Lots of flowers, warm speeches, tears. Everything was going as it should, until he entered the church. A stranger. About 45 years old. Tall, confident, in a black coat. He stood at the entrance, looked around, and headed toward the first row, where my parents, uncles, aunts, my grandfather's children, were sitting. I immediately tensed up. The faces of my relatives froze. The man said calmly, "I'm sorry I didn't warn you. I'm his son too." Silence. Someone stifled a laugh. Someone turned white. The father jumped up. "What the hell? Who are you anyway?" The man didn't look embarrassed. "My name is Ryan Caulfield. I'm 46 years old. My mother is Mary Caulfield. She dated your father before he got married. He knew about me. We corresponded for the last 2 years." I saw my aunt's lips tremble. "This is nonsense," said one of my cousins. "Another scammer. Where is the evidence?" Ryan held out an envelope. Inside were copies of letters, photographs, and, most importantly, a postcard, written in shaky handwriting, in which my grandfather actually mentioned, "I wish he had been around when you were growing up." I sat 2 rows away and remember thinking then why he came, why he decided to show up like that, right at the funeral, to discourage everyone. What was on his mind? Did my grandmother know about him? The funeral ended in tense silence. No talking. Just whispers. I saw my family exchanging glances, some angry, others confused. My mother held my father's hand. He was pale. That evening at home, a real family council began. Someone was shouting, someone was suggesting calling the police. My father was furious. "This is a lie. Father would never keep quiet. He would never hide our brother from us." But my aunt quietly said, "And if he did?" It seemed to me that she knew more than she was saying, in fact, even in the church, it seemed so to me. But she broke off, did not continue. She even bit her lip, her whole body language said that she was afraid to blurt out too much. Ryan offered to do a DNA test. He didn't want money, no inheritance, nothing. Just a confession. I don't want to ruin your family, he said. I just want to know where I come from. My father agreed. Reluctantly. He wanted to prove it was a hoax. The 2 weeks of waiting were unbearable. My sister and I argued, my mother was silent, and my father was getting angrier. I started looking through old photos of my grandfather. I peered into his face. I looked for similarities with this Ryan. And to my horror, I found them. The same cheekbones. The same eyes. Even the way he stood. When the results came back, everyone gathered at my grandfather's house. I held the document in my hands. It was shaking. 99.87% the probability of paternity. Silence. No one cried. Not even my father. He just stood up and left. And then the worst part began. It turned out that my grandfather not only knew about Ryan. He actually corresponded with him. Moreover, he bequeathed him a share in his private company. Insignificant, but legally registered. It was registered as an investment in charity, but Ryan's name appeared in the documents. My father felt betrayed. He was shaking. He did not talk to anyone for a week. Then he said that he would contest the will. That my grandfather was not himself. But his brother, my uncle, unexpectedly sided with Ryan. Dad made a choice. He knew what he was doing. We can be angry, but we have no right to erase a person just because his existence frightens us. In fact, I supported my uncle, but I could not betray my father. I saw how painful it was for him to do what was happening now. It was as if he was getting to know his grandfather again. His world collapsed, everything he knew about himself, about his childhood, about his parents also collapsed. Sometimes I think if my grandfather knew what his silence would lead to, would he still do this? He always insisted on these knots, on the fact that family is the most important thing, everything is based on honesty and respect, and he himself lived completely differently. Now I stand at a crossroads, I support my father, because I cannot do otherwise. He is my knot. But I would also like to get to know Ryan better, because he is our family, that part of my grandfather that, for some reason, he did not show. I have so many questions for him. I sincerely want to know how he grew up, what his grandfather was like for him. How can I do this so that my dad doesn't resent me? I don't want the family to be divided into those who communicate with Ryan and those who don't. It's so stupid. I also noticed that I stopped reaching out to my grandfather. When he first died, I often talked to him, asked for advice or a sign. And now, I kind of resent him a little for hiding such a huge part of his life from us.